Thanks everyone, this is Patrick from the Good Sam EMS office, and today I'm going to be covering the NEMSIS 3.5 image trend transition for the end of the year deadline to switch over to 3.5. A couple of disclaimer items first of all. First, this does not apply to Northwest Community. Northwest Community has its own run form, its own set of validation, and its own education. So if you are a Northwest Community participant, this only affects the non-Northwest Community run form. Very similar, but you need to go there for your guidance. If you work in both, then this is a good introduction to the non-Northwest Community side of things. Some EMS agencies and EMS systems may have different situation tools and power tools, maybe even their own validation and visibility rules. So this is not entirely one size fits all for the non-Northwest agencies. However, it is the majority of the run form. And some screenshots that you see may have items that have been updated since I took the screenshot. So when you actually use the run form, the form, in some cases, the way a field displays the values may indeed be slightly different. So don't be surprised. We make changes like that all along. So the objectives are to review 3.5 changes and the run form, talk about the expanded use of preset values, or what we call autofill buttons, and then the entries that happen when you choose one of those, and just touching on screen changes like instructions and tips. And I'm going to show you one new situation tool and one new power tool that you probably will want to be familiar with. I know a lot of systems and agencies, as I said, have your own, but for the rest of you that don't have anything like that, this will be helpful. So first of all, a real brief overview of NEMSIS nationally versus NEMSIS Illinois. Down in the lower left, you see these are the definitions of the use of data elements. So the two things that I want to concentrate on briefly here are mandatory and required. Mandatory means, and this is a NEMSIS term, means the element must be filled in, but there are no not values. So you have to choose from a list, or you have to enter text, and there aren't any not values. There may be pertinent negatives in some cases, but there aren't any not values like not applicable or not recorded. A required element is something for which an entry is required, but it does allow not values. Now, NEMSIS may allow not values and Illinois might not, and we're currently reviewing some of those situations so we can stay within the NEMSIS framework but allow the EMS systems and individuals the most flexibility possible in completing a record. So 3.4 versus 3.5. NEMSIS in 3.4 had 428 EMS elements, about and 65 of those required an entry of some kind, either mandatory or required. And you see in 3.5, the number of optional elements actually increased, taking away from some of the mandatory and required. So you see 151 now. So the number of you have to enter it fields in the NEMSIS data set went down 9% in the switch. Illinois went the other way, which is Illinois required 157 elements in 3.4. That's up to 174. However, more required elements and less mandatory. So again, more elements that allow not values and less that require you to pick from a list or necessarily enter text. Among the things that have changed are like PPE and exposures. The PPE and exposure grid is no longer an Illinois requirement. However, for obvious reasons from a medical legal documentation standpoint, it will still be required on our run form. But so overall, Illinois actually went up 10%, even while Nemesis dropped a little bit. So here's the new run form. Currently it says training only. When we go live on or after December 1st, that will switch to having 3.5 prominently displayed. Like 3.5.1 will be the run form for the rest of the world, not Northwest Community. The v10.31 has already been updated. I think it's 10 dot something, or it's 11 dot something now, and it will continue. Every time I make a significant edit, I update that. It's the same form, I'm just updating it to let you know that it has been changed. So this is what the run form looks like, and the first thing you're going to hit, be it Elite Field or Elite Online, the cloud version, is this change log. Now the change log is going to be up front initially. It will be kept. However, it will no longer be the first thing in your face when you open the run form after the go live date. So on December 1st, this change log will likely become another panel over there on the left under, like probably under signatures, and it will still be available, so you can still, pop in there and see what might have been updated since the last time you were in, but it won't be right in your face. When you do open the actual visibility tab, at the very top there's this link to bug reporting form, and I'm going to come back and cover this at the end, but if you have any issues or if you have any suggestions, use this bug reporting form to enter those and let me know what those issues are, what those suggestions are, and that's the fastest way of getting me information. You should still share that with your EMS system and with your agency, whatever your reporting chain of command is. However, this gives you a direct link to me so that I don't have to deal with the translation of a problem. So this is the run form. On the left, you see the post button at the top. That means this is an Elite Field form. On the right, you see the Elite in the cloud version, the online version, and you see that there's very little difference between them. Really, the big difference is the post button. The scan 2D DL barcode button is grayed out on the online version because that's not an online feature. That's only an offline feature. But you can see the power tools, everything looks very much the same. So if you ever have a situation where Elite Field isn't working, you can go to Elite Online and have full confidence that you'll be able to do almost everything. And we covered this a long time back, but if you see the little multi-star icon under the link to the bug reporting form on both forms, that is a multi-select field. I went stem to stern on the run report, and you see at the bottom there's other EMS and non-EMS vehicles on scene, so that is a multi-select field. More than one thing can be chosen. Bear in mind that visibility and validation still applies, so when you do something, something else might happen in the run form, but if it is an accurate entry, feel free to make it. So this is the main page, again, Elite Field, because the post button's at the top, and I wanted to show you, concentrate on two particular features here. The first is the number of patients at scene. If you remember the current run form, incident patient disposition was prominently displayed, and that is what was used to set the look and feel of the run form and set validation downstream. Now we're using a combination of these two things, which is number of patients at scene and then patient contact, which is one of the new disposition fields. And basically it's patient contact or it's some other thing that indicates no patient contact. But those two fields set the look and feel of the run form as you move on through it. If we scroll on up the page here, other EMS and non-EMS vehicles on scene. This sets validation and visibility on the other vehicles at scene, other agencies at scene grid later on in the run form. And then you have the injury, cardiac arrest, stroke, MCI, and work-related injury fields below it, but you see at the top of that is the new button with the orange diamonds on it, and that is one of the preset values buttons, or an autofill button. And with 2 clicks here, by clicking that button and then clicking Apply Changes, you can set No to all of the fields that are below it here. I'll show you that on the next screen. So there's the fields I just talked about. At the very now validated on the run form, if you have patient contact, then the were aspirin, epi, naloxone, or nitro field is required. Yes opens up some validation on some other fields. No takes those things away, and unknown does the same really as no. At the very bottom, you see the display all sections and panels. So this is the other EMS and non-EMS vehicles as seen as I talked about, and there is the grid where it now gets validated, or it opened the grid and it gets validated, and then you see that at least one other EMS agency on scene type must be entered, etc. So here's the no injury, stroke, arrest, and that is one example of autofill buttons. The other more prominent one is the autofill panel. And we're talking about whether to switch these around. Autofill go before visibility. I kind of like it the way it is, and we've set the expectation for this, but a suggestion came to consider swapping them around. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Nothing's going to change immediately. Another example of preset values buttons are on the cardiac arrest panel for setting predictable sets of values based on, a sort of a predictable scenario. So what happens when you do a preset values button? It pops something open. It pops open a little window, and it might be 1 or 2 items. It might be 20 or 30 items, and they get applied. So if we clicked on that no cardiac arrest, mass casualty, possible injury, etc., we're going to fill in 5 values. Now you see on this run form, when I took a screenshot, I had already filled in part of the run form. Ordinarily, these would be blank, and then you'd be filling in no's. So you click on the preset values button, you click on apply changes. With 2 clicks, you entered 5 different things. I'm just a click counter, and 2 clicks are faster than 5. Here is the disposition auto fields. You see treat, transport are green, and then orange is a non-transport vehicle with patient contact, and down below that are a number of other combinations of assessments and treatments, but no transports below that line. And when you choose one of these dispositions, this is, let's see, treat, transport, ALS, single unit, you get, and you see at the top, 1 to 10 of 20 things. Now, this is a better example of what you would be doing with the preset values button. You see the current value, there's a bunch of things that are blank, and in the new value, there's a bunch of things that are filled in. So if you're not familiar with using the preset values buttons, you will want to be in the new run form, because the disposition matrix is so much more complicated, and we've just made a lot of shortcuts with these. Another feature which was present before but is more prominent now is what we call the filter buttons. Sometimes they're called 6-pack buttons, sometimes they're called filter buttons, sometimes it's something like this where it says display all of the things above. And it might be above the choice, it might be below the choice. Generally they are below, but in this case, by default, we have a set of 6 buttons. So in ImageTrend, if you shorten a list to 6 or less items, you get buttons. If it's 7 or more items, you get a list. So we try to shorten the lists as much as possible to 6 items using visibility. as this does, and we get that list down into 6. However, if and a common one here would be fire company in roll. So if you need to enter fire company, then you're going to have to tap the display the full crew roll list in order to see the other choices in this. So when you do that, when you tap yes, then you're going to see the entire list, and it's as it's displayed on the screen here. Another situation where we're using those is PPE. In this case, the filter button is above the PPE grid on the crew tab, but you see there are 4 choices in the filter list: routine, COVID, rescue, or ballistic. And when you choose, for instance, routinely, you are going to choose routine PPE. And you see on the right side of the screen that shortened the list on the left down into 6 buttons on the right. So same thing with COVID. That would be the heavier duty PPE, and then rescue is where you're going to get fire gear, and ballistic you're going to have, helmets and vests that would be in that category. So whenever possible, use one of these filters. However, if you are looking for something that you know logically should be in that field and you can't find it, then unclick the yes or unclick a button, a filter button that you've chosen, and that will give you back to the full list. So nothing chosen, you get a list. Something chosen in this field, then you get buttons. On the run form, you're going to see a tab called Destination Barcode. This is a future project, but I wanted to tell you why it's there. There is a way of scanning destination barcodes and ingesting that information into the run form that will improve the matching of the record if the record is being sent directly to the hospital medical record, not faxing, but actually sent as a direct message direct into the hospital, and they attempt to ingest it right into the matching patient record. So if we scan a barcode with the medical record number, or what's called the CSN, the event number at the hospital, then that will can be used to improve matching. And the closer we get to 100%, the better for everybody. Online medical control, you see a filter below the medical control contact and alert, and this will be used to triage down the number of choices in that list. So voice will give you only the voices. eBridge, if you are lucky enough to use eBridge in the world, that will display only the eBridge choices. Stroke notifications, STEMI notifications, there's multiple filters there that will shorten the list. And again, we're just trying to make buttons out of lists. So if we choose stroke notifications at the bottom, this is going to put up just the things pertaining to stroke. So a routine verbal call versus a stroke alert verbal, or an eBridge, or an eBridge with a subsequent voice call. Depends on how you do business as to which one you would choose. In general, this may be validated so that if you called it a stroke and it was high criticality elsewhere on the run form, then you may get an orange pop-up here that says, "Are you sure you didn't do a stroke alert on this?" In some cases, you may get a time which is required to be validated. So particularly with verbal calls, then there will be a time associated with that. Use whatever time. This is a general estimate. If medical control logs a time and you can get that when you get to the hospital, then use their time. Otherwise, you can approximate it. And this is just going to be used to measure intervals, particularly on those time-sensitive notification calls where we're looking to see when the hospital was notified and see if we can identify any opportunities for improvement in that process. Any of the voice calls, any of the voice contacts, there will be an orange label, so that's 0 validation points. You can leave it blank, but we're asking you pretty please for it. ETA in minutes given to online medical control. We don't know, after 40 odd years of doing this, whether we're any good at estimating ETAs. And so perhaps we can use this to sharpen our game there. So ETA in minutes that you gave to online medical control will be filled in there. Another thing that's different is there's the times panel that you're used to in the upper right under the timeline is gone. So there is one place to input times. Currently, I think on the run form there's 2 or maybe 3 different places, and sometimes it's confusing because that then creates 3 different validation error places. And so we eliminated that and took it down to 1. So it's under the Start Here tab. You see times input. It's got some other times in there that are read-only, and the incident number is also here as well. So if you are looking for a time entry, this is where you're going to find it. Other things, and this is just a smattering, an assortment of things. Race is now state required. I think it was orange validated on the current run form. It's now going to be red validated on the new run form. There are some new gender choices there of the transgenders. And at the bottom, you see how was weight determined, estimate or what the patient, so if you estimated or the patient stated their weight, but they didn't have an actual, recent documented weight, then you would use the estimated or stated button. If the patient says, I just weighed myself this morning, or you're picking them up at a medical facility where the patient was weighed, let's just use within the last 24 hours, then actual measured weight can be used and entered and chosen. Past medical history, advanced directives is now required. You see there is a 6-pack button at the bottom. I picked the most common 4, but because there's more than 6, I shortened it to as short as possible. Patient care report. The narrative has always been required, that error number 2526. Now, we had a variety of systems requiring a variety of number of characters. I set it at 50 for now. So the minimum for everyone is 50. Some systems have rules that require more than that, but 50 is a good minimum. Validation things. There are lots of 0-point validation rules. There's the second one down there is the ETA in minutes. You see at the top is date, time, initial responder arrived, and that is if other vehicles responded, then this is requested. You see at the bottom there's some other sort of test validity rules on like monitor import. We've had one for a while now where we've encouraged the Good Sam providers, if they had an ALS patient, particularly of certain acuities and certain types, then we remind them to import their monitor data. And there are a number of rules in the new form that compare the number of vitals to other things. For instance, in Region 8, if you, the standing medical orders say you should have a set of vitals following every ALS procedure or medication. So this will compare the number of medications to the number of vitals, but it's only 0-point validation. It's just going to remind you, are you sure you didn't take another set of vitals in there that you didn't document, or maybe you took one that you didn't take on the monitor that you can add in manually in the middle? Remember, a set of vitals is anything in the vitals grid. So a Glasgow Coma score. And I'm not going to go through these line by line, but there are 4 pages of them here of different kinds of things. Some of these are state rules where the state used to have a validation, an error level validation on it. Now they have a warning level validation. So you see protocols used and protocol age category. I believe those used to be validated by the state as being required. Now they're merely asked for, and we're going to make some improvements on some of those. On down, we have some reminder warnings, like the medication allergies in the middle there. Medication allergies are invalid because there are multiple pertinent negatives chosen. There only can be one pertinent negative chosen. medication allergies, patient denies, plus then another entry was made. So it just error checks to make sure that there isn't conflicting information. On endotracheal or advanced airway present or insertions. See the fourth one down, breath sounds left is suggested. So in addition to doing the verification fields in the successful airway power tool, it is suggested that you open up an assessment or an exam power tool and do breath sounds. You see pronouncement of death, medical control practitioner. That's a new Loyola thing. ECG rhythm. PEA is a clinical condition, not a rhythm. So if you choose PEA, you have to have an accompanying rhythm with it. Things like that. CARES rules on here, those actually I think will need to be switched to 1-point validation rules because they are required to form a valid CARES entry. That's cardiac arrest registry. Let's see. Second half here, check parameters. So there is a validation rule that looks at common medications and says, well, if you said adenosine 8 milligrams, or if you said adenosine 6 milligrams sub-Q, then you should check the parameters on that. So I've started, I haven't finished it certainly, but I've took the most common ones and put them in there. So this is the ALS dash situation tool. On the right in every one of your screens, that is the Elite Field or Elite, remember the power tools are on the right and they are blue. An orange icon in the power tool section is actually a situation tool. And a situation tool is a tool that groups together power tools. So here is the dash situation tool, and you see we have assessment, vascular access, and some other sections here, but each of these buttons is a link to a power tool. It will open up a power tool. In some cases, you can even set them to just go ahead and send the item right into the timeline. Don't even bother opening it up. But for the most part, we're using things where it's going to pop open and it's going to ask you a couple of questions, but many things may already be filled out. So you got assessment, vascular access, the top, including the most common medication, dose, route, etc. You got which includes the IV and IO equivalents or buttons for epinephrine, amiodarone 300 and 150, sodium bicarb, and mag sulfate, as well as an amiodarone 150 drip. Again, your mileage may vary. If your system doesn't use those, then let me know and we can make them disappear via visibility tools. And then you see at the bottom, I started with other medications and I stopped with adenosine, but we will get them all in there. The most common standard medication dosages preset. And by the way, adenosine is already up in the most common medication section. And then here's the snapshot power tool. So this was the very first icon on the dash situation tool, and it is a combination of vitals and assessment, an exam grid at the bottom. So we start out with Glasgow Coma Score. We start out at the top with crew and date, and then Glasgow Coma Score parameters. On up to finish the rest of the Glasgow, including the GCS total, which is automatically calculated after you have filled in the 3 parameters and chosen a qualifier. Section, which you start out with choosing the method and then entering the number, and the mean pressure is automatically calculated. If you are doing a palpatory blood pressure, you enter the systolic and tick the little P box there, and then that is a valid blood pressure. heart rate, method, pulse strength, and rhythm. So if you're just taking the heart rate off the monitor, which is a typical import thing, then monitor is pre-chosen here. I'm still a big palpated guy, so if you are taking an actual pulse, you fill in the value, you would change that to palpated and then give the parameters of the palpated pulse. Rate, and then effort and regularity. FiO2, including the FiO2 qualifier. Photography waveform, and the favorite values that will appear on the screen are square regular, square increasing, and square decreasing. The cardiac oscillations, etc., is now going to be hidden, or is currently hidden, under the More button. But so you can enter a ETCO2 value. I believe the capnography waveform validation rule is an orange rule only, which will ask you, remind you, cajole you to enter the waveform if you can. G-rhythm, the common leads and the method of interpretation. Remember, this is where you would be choosing PEA if you were doing that, and it will require you to pick something else along with PEA. Glucose and temperature. RST for pain. So this is provoked, quality, region, and radiation, although we're going to skip past radiation. S is the score or severity, so a numeric value. And then T for time is the duration. So your onset would be in a different place on the run form, onset date and time, but this would be the duration of the complaint. Prior to arrival, you see is defaulted as no, and at the bottom there is add exams. So let's say you had a set of vitals and you wanted to do breath sounds, you would tap on add exams and you would find the lung chest section of the exam, and that would be date and time stamped at the same time as the vitals. So on to bug reporting. So this is my ask if you find bugs, and secondarily if you have suggestions. First of all, stop editing the record if you can. I realize this is going to punish you if you are at 95% done on a training run form and you hit an irreconcilable error. I'm going to ask you to stop editing that record, which means, if your coordinator requires you to have X number of 100 validation runs, you're going to have to do another one unless you work with them and beg off on that because you are doing a bug report. But stopping the editing of the record keeps the error in the context in which it occurred, and that's essential to me to bug shoot it. If you just tell me, I clicked this and this and this and this happened, and if I can't recreate that, then we haven't done any good. So please leave the record as it is in the error state, and then put some kind of a unique identifier in the incident number so that I can easily retrieve it. So in this case, it was a training record, and you can leave training as the incident number as a default as you're going through. But if you had a record that was a problem, then put something after the word training in the incident number so that I can find it quickly and easily with a search of the incident records in your agency. So if you just put your last name and the date or something, just some sort of a string of text that you then put on the error reporting form so that I'll be able to find the broken record that you are reporting. Screenshots are a good idea. They're a great idea if you can do it. So if you can get a picture of the actual error. However, they're very difficult. You can't send those with the bug report form. So it means you're going to have to be mailing them to me a different way, email them directly to me. So Putting the error codes into the bug reporting form is almost as good. Tell me what the error codes were that occurred at the time that you created the record and you had the problem. If you have the validation rule that can't be satisfied in a screenshot, that is also helpful, and it helps me to understand maybe. And there's no issue with you maybe transposing the numbers. Oh, I wrote 3768 instead of 3678 when I created the bug form. If you do create a screenshot, you'll have to email it to me. So patrick.sennett@aah.org would be the way of doing that. And again, if you just put the error number into the form, that's great. And by the way, if multiple people on your shift or whatever are having the same error, there's no need to report the same error 5 times from your shift. Just give it to me once. So here is just a tiny little screenshot of the visibility filter, that second panel after the changelog, and this is the link at the very top. So you click on that, and it's going to pop up a question. Are you sure you want to open a new browser tab and go to that address? The answer is yes. However, this is a time to point out that you have to be online and when you're filling this out. If you don't have internet connectivity, then it won't be able to open that link. So most of the time you're going to be doing this back in the station where you've got big fat bandwidth, but in case you don't, you'll need to get online in order to report the bug. And then this is the form. So what agency, what was the category or type of entry that you were making? Briefly describe the problem. Rule number or numbers, or type NA if it's just a suggestion you're making. These things with the little maroon asterisk are required, so you'll have to put something in there. The record date or today's date, if today's the day you're doing that record, and then email address and your name for follow-up. So click submit. You should get an email. Well, you may not actually if you're not logged in. So you probably won't get an email. I'll get a pop-up in my email that says that I've received the new form though. And thank you in advance for your diligence in documenting the errors that you find so that I can fix the problems and help us all out. So what's the plan going forward? We've got like 4 weeks roughly until we have to be on only submitting 3.5 data. So the absolute end date is the 18th of December. I'm actually using the 15th of December because that's a Friday, so that we have an entire week to prepare for that, and it's not a bunch of people trying to change over the weekend. EMS systems will individually dictate what the switchover deadlines are. So for instance, in Good Sam, we're going to open it up on the 1st. I'm going to have agencies, I'm going to encourage them strongly to go live on the 1st, but if there is an issue with them not being able to go live on the 1st, they'll have up to the 15th to do that. Other EMS systems will likely say, nah, we're all going to do it on the 1st of December or the 7th of December or something. So that exact guidance will come from your EMS system and or your agency administrators. The most important thing for an agency is that the entire agency needs to switch over at the same time. So you pick a date and time, and at 0700, you begin using the new form. At that time, your coordinator or someone on your coordinator's behalf should make the 3.4 form disappear, and you should have to make sure that you resync Elite Field in order to bring those changes down. So if you took 3.4 down at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you logged in at 7 o'clock in the morning, you would resync all or sync all resources and that would bring down the absolute latest changes in run forms, validation, visibility, all that good stuff. So the switchover needs to include resyncing of all Elite field instances. As I said, that's what all that takes place. The last thing to remind you of is that the word training has to be in the incident number for all training records. You can have stuff in front of it, you can have stuff after it. A really good way of checking out the new run form would be to open up Elite Field immediately after returning to quarters after you've just worked a call where everything is fresh in your mind. Now we have some suggestions. I gave some, and I'm going to send this to the coordinators, some mock or pretend patient data. So you would never want to use actual live patient demographics. You would use a fake patient. You'll probably just be pulling a repeat patient once the first shift of the coordinator enters them into these mock patients into your patient data. You will see the name then pop up when you enter it in the run form, and it allows you to pull repeat patient data. But everything else about the call could be live, including pulling CAD, pulling monitor data, doing all the things you just did, but using a fake patient ID in there instead. And then walk through the run form and see how things go in the 3.5 form differently than they may have gone in the 3.4 form. But absolutely make sure that the word training is in the incident number for all training records. When you switch over, when you go live, then you'll need to take training out of there, but I'm going to leave the word training in as a default in the interim until December 1st so that people don't make that mistake. That's why it would be great if everybody would switch over on December 1st, because then you won't have to manually enter the word training into the incident number for training records that occur after that. So that's all. If you have any questions, enter a bug form, enter suggestions in there. Follow with your agency or your EMS system. I don't intend to be the primary tech support on this, but I may very well be. But if you are a Sherman provider, then Debbie will have a lot of answers. If you are in other systems, go to your system coordinator or your system resource hospital for answers. And if they say call Patrick, then you can do that. Email me. I prefer emails to phone calls, so that's patrick.sennett@aah.org, and I'll do my best to help you out. I wish you good luck. I wish you very few problems, and I hope that you will report those problems to me promptly so that I can get them fixed. And I will be working on this every day between now and go live so that you can rest assured that we'll find answers to problems if they still exist. Thanks, and I will talk to you soon.